I've never been so certain from meeting somebody that it was who I wanted to create like a long-term sacred union with, to grow old together. From the start, it's just been obvious to both of us, like that train already left the station. We're on board it. And like I'm looking forward to growing old with her and being more in the typical like honeymoon phase. There will obviously be changes, births, deaths of the relationship. We'll work through all of that together. And I look forward to coming on your podcast a couple years from now to
Mhm.
talk about what we've learned.
Welcome to Safe to Love. We are on a mission to help the world believe in love again and give you the courage to find it. Our next guest, we are so excited to introduce. They've been together 5 months, 4 days, and 3 hours and counting. 36, and 2 weeks, 36 minutes, 36 seconds. Anyways, we met them. I guess Chad met them through his men's group, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he met them in the men's group, and then they came to a drum circle, and instantly I loved you both. I was just like, this is the cutest couple. And I actually thought you had been together for so long because you were just so familiar and comfortable with each other. And I just remember like instantly talking with you, Carrie, and being like, I like this girl. Like I genuinely just like this girl. And every time we've talked, Stephen, you and I, ever since, it's like we have these profound conversations about love and intimacy, and just your perspective is so different that I remember last time we were talking, I was like, we have to have these guys on. We have to have them on to share their story. So here we are having you on to share your love story and your backstory and anything else you want to share about love in general, about your philosophy. You just both have such an interesting perspective of love. So we will leave it over to Steve and Carrie.
Thank you. Honored to get to be here. And to me, the thing that matters most in this world is really learning to love and learning to be loved. I think that's the greatest experience of why we're all here in this world. So I love that you're creating a podcast and sharing a message that is really helping people dig into how to be love and be loved, because it's the most profound feeling in this world, I think. So my story starts. I'm a big believer that it is because of the pain that I've experienced in my life that I have the depth and capacity to love how I love now. And while I look back on my life, and there was a lot of early childhood trauma, and there was a lot of pain, and there was a lot of escapism, and there was a lot of wild adventures and parkouring through the whole experience. It's really one of the things Stephen and I say all the time is we can just like blanket gratitude all of our life before, because somehow it got us to where we are now. And being where we are now feels like it's just an
So worth it.
astronomically different feeling. It just feels like what this world, what this life is about, like really learning to love and be loved. So a little bit about my story pertaining to love and the difficulty that I've kind of had with it is one of the most difficult things for me was being adopted, and I didn't bond with my caregivers and didn't ever really trust in them, and was always pushing against them. And that's kind of what I learned, that love, a lot of like what I had experienced with love, I learned that I had to be the person that would help soothe their emotions. And so it was really draining for me to have people wanting to attach to me, because I was being used as like their energy filter, but it was draining me. So I made it to 38 without ever getting married. I haven't had any children. And spent, I think, a lot of my life in my early 20s really pushing away from relationships in a variety of ways, traveling a lot. I was very curious. I felt like I had to learn a lot about what a family was by traveling to China and Southeast Asia and Mexico and Nepal, and just I was ever curious about the way other people lived and the way families um, lived, and was doing a lot of research in all throughout the world, trying to see what, yeah, how families interact with one another. And my greatest wound was belonging, because I was taken from, yeah, my mother as a baby and placed in a household that I didn't feel like I belonged in. And in a lot of ways it almost felt like a prison cell for me being at that house.
Mm.
I felt very stifled creatively, and very sad. Um, and and then I had other traumatic experiences in my childhood that also added to the complexity of feeling like intimacy isn't safe, being touched too early. So I had a really delightful soup inside of me that would push away love,
Mm.
pushed away true intimacy, pushed away all of that. One of my great difficulties in my life has been learning to stay in my body with intimacy,
Mm.
and learning how to actually be present. One, just staying in my body with intimacy. And secondly, learning how to allow my sexual energy to flow through me, and learning how to like experience my own sexual desire,
Mhm.
and feeling like that's going to be safe,
Yeah.
because early on it was really, um, I felt blamed for it when I was an 8-year old and he was an adult. And I felt like the message was very much one that it was my fault because of this energy that flows through me. So it was something that caused me to really put a lot of shame on that and tether my identity to shame. Um, and so it has been like my personal Mount Everest in life to recognize where I was dissociating, um, and to come back into my body and reclaim that power and reclaim my sensuality, and to then shed enough beliefs about love and attachment in order to even believe in the possibility that I might find a relationship and a home life where I want to be there consistently.
Mhm.
That is a huge shift for me in my life, to actually like consistently want to be in a household, in a family. And then I met Steven, and he has 2 children, and I bonded with them very quickly when we met at Metasound. And right away, it's been astounding to just also feel like I mentioned, there's very much like a wounded little child in me that was like, oh, I wish I would have had this a certain kind of childhood where I was free to artistically create and musically create and just kind of have that childhood. And so then to be able to immediately enter into this world with Steven, where we say like, not only are we giving our adult selves like our dream lives, we're also giving our child selves like their ultimate dream. Like,
Mm.
and we're doing that with his children there in this household, and creating an environment for them where it's like we're always making up songs and creating and dancing and just being it's just this joyous place of creative expression. And it's incredible to feel like you can simultaneously heal your little kid parts of yourself, create experiences that are fun for actual children, um, and have it where like parts of yourself at every single age are like, wow, I want to be here. Like, this is awesome. Like,
Mhm.
that all ages of yourselves can simultaneously be like, I'm present for this and excited about being here.
Mm.
So,
Well, and Carrie, you spent some time kind of withdrawn, right, from the world, even almost, right? As you said, like being around people at all didn't feel safe, and recently kind of decided to come back into that space and be open to connection and community again.
Yeah, it's I in my 20s, I owned some gyms and created these spaces that were very connected and community and connected. And then I had a reality show that featured me. And I didn't realize that reality shows attract people who like to judge others. I didn't realize that was the name of the game of reality shows. And I'm a very sensitive and very sincere person. And so it just really broke me, like
Mm.
having the judgment of that's what reality television is about. And it's about people, enjoying the pastime of judging others. Like I have no business being in that kind of space. I'm too sensitive for that. So after that experience, it just broke my heart.
Mm.
And I had all this trauma inside of me. And all these people in my life, like my whole life like exploded. Like I was with my fiance of 8 years and lost my best friend and my gyms and all this community, and it all went away when my heart broke, and I didn't have anybody that asked me, and they had nobody thought to ask, like, do you think this might have something? Do you think maybe if you haven't processed the trauma that comes from being abandoned as a baby or being sexually abused as a child, like maybe that's a place to look. I didn't have anybody that came in and gave me that. And so I was very distrusting of people. I felt really brokenhearted, feeling like it was my role to hold things up for everybody else. But when it came to light that I'm a human being too, and I have traumas and I have shadows and I have,
Needs.
yeah, yeah, I felt very deserted by everything I'd created, and it broke my heart. So I went to traveling and living abroad again, and just, yeah, living in the desert, doing mushroom journeys, and where people would only hear about me being down there if they heard it through the wind, and they could come and, find me. And yeah, I was quite withdrawn from society in a lot of ways. And so it has been such a big journey coming back. And that's been kind of a scary thing for me about being in this relationship, is that I always tell Steven how much, like, I just feel like I'm so fleshy here. And I'm like alive, and I want to be here, and I want to be like physically feeling this and experiencing this. And that's a scary thing for me as well, to feel like, to go, one of the names I call depression is like the land where nothing matters. And I've spent time living in the land where nothing matters. And now I'm in a very different land where everything seems like it matters. And it's beautiful, and it's something I wanted in a lot of ways, but it feels scary to
Mhm.
me to feel how much skin I have in the game now.
Yeah.
Like, I was telling him last night how it's like this buffet that we're at, like, to get to the party, like it's like there was like a buffet of life, the feast of life, and then now we've like entered the secret door that's like the creme de la creme. But the entrance into this, like the creme de la creme buffet, is like you have to set your heart on the table.
Mm.
And like
I love that.
yeah. So that's where we are.
Well, especially to enter into a relationship with someone like Steven, who's very much surrounded by people,
Mhm.
and kind of coming all the way back into society.
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, I want to just point to one thing and ask a question. So, safety is like you need to create safety to receive love, to receive pleasure. And that's just something I don't think people talk enough about. Like, that you like, oh, I have this sexual abuse, I have this abandonment issues. I need to work through this. But then there's also now I've got this love of my life, and now there's all this work to do and all this level of safety to be able to learn how to receive love. And so I'm just curious, what was your process of being the wanderer in the land of things that don't matter. And how did that land you to this music festival? Like, what was kind of like because it sounds like you were pretty self-led. And it didn't sound like you had a lot of community or a lot of people being like, hey, you should come to this music festival, or hey, I want to introduce you to this guy. It was kind of like, it sounded like it was a solo journey. So I'm just curious what led you to that festival where you first met.
Thanks for that. And thanks for intuiting that. Yeah, I was very self-led. Well, I'm grateful for this beautiful community we all find ourselves to be participating in. And I think it was through like the women's drum circle group and then people I met there and mutual friends that I was like, I experienced
belonging.
It's just some friends that I instantly, my little inner child was like, oh, I like you. Like this is fun. And so we through that circle found out about this music festival is what took me there.
It's incredible, isn't it, that when we've never experienced safety in certain situations like relationships or community, like that first experience of it can really be the catalyst to believe that maybe it's possible when your very experience of community and people was unsafe and the only thing that felt safe was to be isolated. The power of these communities that are built on safety and authenticity can really begin like a catalyst for a huge process.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear you guys get into your story, but before we do, I want to kind of get a little bit of background of who Stephen was. And one thing that we didn't say at the start, but before me and Stephen actually met, Stephen was somebody that in our men's group, I remember being at a retreat once and somebody was like, we got to get Chad and Stephen in the same room. Like that would be and just in this way that there was this kind of similarity in our energy. And it's been so fun now that we've gotten to know each other to experience that. And I love hearing the story of we carry our stories, our past with us, right? And how we came to be who we are.
Yeah. No, thank you, Chad. And really appreciate being on the show. The emphasis on safety as the like mandatory foundation for love, I think is a message that really resonates with me, resonates with my experience. And, as I hear Carrie talk about, her backstory, it just continually blows my mind that like a gem like her somehow went 38 years through like all of the twists and turns, developing this resilience, the hardiness, the capacity that is only gained through like that adversity, and then somehow landed in my lap. I feel like the luckiest man in the world. I think, like you said, before we get into the specifics of our relationship, I'll just give a little bit on my background. I think for me, it really starts probably a more typical story that Chad, you and I might hear in our men's circles of like at a very young age, feeling the safety and security of being physically provided for in a loving household. So never really having to worry as much about like my own body safety or physical safety, but very quickly, as early as I can remember, learning that my emotions were not necessarily like shamed or punished, but just not valuable, not going to get me anything, not going to kind of be not even validated, but even acknowledged. And so, quickly learning the lesson that society was very prepared to teach me that, like as a boy and becoming a man, those emotions are a liability. They're not an asset, and there's nothing valuable in them. And so, starting as early as I can remember, I don't think I cried at all from the ages of 3 on, and making conscious decisions going into elementary school, middle school, high school. At each time, like calculating logically, like, oh, well, I want to be popular and I don't want to be like made fun of as much. And like, how can I do that? And so learning which masks to wear, learning like, oh, well, those kids are popular and like those kids are being made fun of. So like, how can I be more like the popular kids so I can be popular? And how can I get girls to like me? And all of it being um, masks that I'm picking up and putting on. And I think reinventing myself at each of those levels, like, Carrie and I talked about, I played the trumpet in middle school, but going into high school, it was like, well, in order to keep playing the trumpet, you have to be in the marching band. I'm like, I can't be in the marching band. Like, I'm not going to be able
That's
to
not
be.
cool.
Yeah, definitely. This is not congruent with what I've learned you need to be. And so just decision to decision after that, I think I can see that I was really consciously trying to fit in and get social success, get, really drilled into me. And I appreciate this about my parents and grandparents. Like the message was do well academically, get a good job, then you can be successful. And also the kind of more important corollary to that was do the things that you need to do to be a good Christian, because um, the overwhelming love that I felt and still feel from my parents, definitely I can see from their perspective, the strategy is we show and shower that love when you are meeting certain criteria, doing well in school, being academically successful, and showing up as a good Christian. So, you know, fortunately, the like doing well in school thing felt pretty aligned for me. I've always been curious. I've always been very kind of wanting to excel mentally, but performatively on the showing up as a good Christian front. So again, just more lessons of wear these masks, do these things, and you'll receive the kind of social success and societal success. And for better or for worse, like those strategies worked. And so disconnecting from myself, disconnecting from my emotions, and wearing masks after masks were getting me what I thought I wanted. And so continuing on that trajectory all the way up until um, my sister died of cancer. It was a long, drawn out thing. I was in my mid 20s and had the kind of ability to distance myself from it a little bit, that my parents did not have that. And when she finally died, um, I felt nothing, like, and it really caused me to start questioning myself of like, what is going on here? Because like, I can overlook like some of this other stuff, but if my sister dies and I feel nothing, I spoke eloquently at the funeral, everybody else was crying, and I just felt nothing. I felt empty. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, how, like, this is not normal. Like, other people would feel something. I'm not feeling anything. I looked for accessing feeling stuff, couldn't feel it. Like, so just to really highlight how disconnected from myself, and really started to internalize beliefs. I couldn't really trace it back like I can now of like, oh, well, at all of these steps, you disconnected farther and farther from yourself. Just like, well, something's wrong. Like, I don't just not have strong emotions. I don't have emotions. I would really internalize those beliefs. And I talked to a couple really close friends of mine, and it's interesting because in retrospect, those emotions did pour out. It was like 5 years later after.
They went somewhere.
Yeah, they went into little bubbles everywhere in my body. Like, Carrie's been around as those bubbles still come up to this day. I think pushing them away for so long kind of permeated them in. But it was 5 years after that, sitting on a couch with a really close friend of mine, Charlie. I just started wailing and sobbing and heaving, and it was both scary and overwhelming, and also like, oh, I am a human. Look at that. And kind of poke some holes in the dam. But that started my journey back to feeling some things. But it really wasn't until still being in this disconnected state, going through the kind of pain of a divorce and feeling like I was losing my family, not knowing what to do with it, the pain becoming more than even my unhealthy coping mechanisms could bear, that it finally, you know, to lack of a better term, like cracked me wide open and just whatever framework I'm operating under isn't it. It's bullshit. Like everything is bullshit. Like, and so I'm flailing, like, going through a divorce, not feeling like I have any support, not knowing anything because everything this hyper rational construct of like, I don't have, like, it was all bullshit. Like a nuclear bomb went off. And it was in some of the men's groups, like, Chad talks about and leads, that I found some support. I found some examples of men being vulnerable as a strength, not a weakness. Up until that point, I'd coded it as, if you're showing emotions, you're like a squishy, weak human. And like, I don't have that problem.
Mhm.
And so I'll do better. And so repatterning vulnerability and emotions as a strength, not a weakness, has been
Mm.
a long process that I'm still going through. Um, and I think hmm, it, I was on a multi-years journey of quickly trying to find who I am, what's true for me, really dedicated finally to authenticity to self, not just who am I, but how can I make sure that I'm gaining as much awareness over everything inside of me, even stuff I might be trying to hide from myself. And like, it's disconcerting. I don't want to pretend like I had like certainty of anything. It was a lot of uncertainty. And um, as I got more in touch with my emotions, I did have some really amazing relationships, and started to feel both loved and love to hold and be held in ways that I had never really experienced up until that point. And eventually got to this point of um, knowing I only want to be in a relationship if all of me can show up and be held. All of me can show up and be seen. I can almost, I was in this point of like, I'll almost like verbal diarrhea out my inner monologue, which could be very jarring, understandably so, to tons of people around me. But it felt like the most effective way to ensure I was being authentic to the extent that I knew myself. Um, and somehow, when I first met Carrie, we laid it all out there almost immediately. And I could feel, I think she just has this capacity that I had never felt before, to love all of me, even the shadows that I'm still working on, integrating the things that might annoy the shit out of her. Um, Not that she has to not be annoyed by them, but can hold it with love, and help. She helps lead me through these processes, the water rituals of finding the parts of me that might be harder for me to love and like bringing them back into my heart. Um, I can't overstate how good that feels, how safe it feels to be able to show all of the parts of me. And I feel like I've made tremendous growth, that never would have been possible, without Carrie being able to do that. And I think it's only because of the capacity she developed to hold herself in those ways, that she's been able to do that for me. And it has felt overwhelmingly joyful at times that all of the work I put in to create emotional safety for myself, to feel my insecurities and hold them without needing to make them a problem or go away, has translated in being able to create the safety that she's blooming in. It's this beautiful symbiotic wheel of giving and receiving at the same time. Um, we get caught in loops sometimes of like, oh, well, like you've been like helping me so much. Like, how can I help you? You've been holding so much space for me. How can I? And we're both like trying to do that for the other because we both feel like we're just getting so much out of this. Like, what else can I do for you? And ah, it's overwhelming at times. Um, Not trying to say it's all been like super easy or that we haven't, triggered each other's insecurities or attachment wounds, because that's what a relationship is. But continuing to lean back into each other. Um, I've never been so certain from meeting somebody that it was who I wanted to create like a long term sacred union with, um, to grow old together. Um, from the start, it's just been obvious to both of us, like that train already left the station. We're on board it. And like, I'm looking forward to growing old with her. And I love the opportunity to be on this podcast with us, being more in the typical like honeymoon phase of a relationship. Um, of like, there will obviously be like changes, births, deaths of the relationship, and um, the just knowing I have that we'll work through all of that together, that whatever challenges, it's an indescribable feeling that I've never felt before. And I look forward to coming on your podcast a couple of years from now to
Hmm.
talk about what we've learned,
Yeah.
what else has changed.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Stephen, because I did want to talk about we up until this point have only had couples on that had been together for a long time, and there was a reason for that, right? One of the primary missions of this show is to help the world believe in love again, and we wanted to bring stories that show people that to break the myth that a lot of people have that nobody's been together for a long time and happy. And what inspired us to invite you on the show is talking to you and hearing the ways that the maturity and the tools that you are bringing into this relationship, the ways that you were going around or going about building this relationship in a understanding like, okay, as you said, I played the old game for a long time. And you also share a lot about why, right? You were good at it, like suppressing your emotions, controlling that, disconnecting. That led to a lot of success in this world, even if ultimately it led to this emptiness inside. And now we want to create something different. And that's a lot of what April, like this really reminiscent of the place that April and I came into. And the question that a lot of people have is, okay, so I believe in love again. Okay, I won't give up. But what the hell do I do? Because I have a lifetime of what not to do. I have an internet full of either cynicism or all this conflicting advice. And we could just feel that the way that you two were going about it, whether or not, whatever the future holds, you were entering into this union, building it from the start, building the foundation of safety, building the foundation of authenticity, and leaning in to the possibility to create the possibility of something that could last.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting words to that. Like before the show, we were talking about the values of your podcast, and it feels so aligned to me. It's why I've consumed, your episodes with Scott or with Adam and Caitlin. As I started doing men's work, I've been looking for examples of people that have like long-term successful relationships that I'd want to emulate. And they're so few and far between to find, because people that can honestly say like, we've been together decades and I'm more in love with them now than I was when we met. Um, you hear that, but a lot of times people don't mean it.
Mm.
A lot of what I hear behind the scenes is the like unspoken resentments that have built up over time, or the like white knuckling it just to get through. So like, it feels rare in today's society to see those examples. You guys have had examples of that on your show, and it is people like that I like to learn from, and learn to emulate. And Carrie and I very early on in our relationship came up with some kind of values of what we want to shoot for. And we talk about always staying aligned with sexy, joyful, loving adventure, being four of the kind of core values, creating this relational container that's bigger than both of us. And what is the kind of purpose of it? What are we trying to create? Like what does the energy of that field look like? And then checking in with both of us individually, like what in our lives is aligned with that and grow and water, and what like in our lives needs to move farther away to stay like in alignment with that bigger field. And if there are things that are coming up that feel like they're threatening safety or triggering either one of our nervous systems, we want to address those together and be honest with each other about them as they're happening. I feel like a lot of the typical relational advice, like especially in the more new age spiritual community, reads a lot like hyper independence is a trauma response.
Mm.
And I get it. I think it's a necessary first step to come back, especially if most of like the experience has been over functioning, self abandoning, or giving too much of self to come back home to yourself. Um, but I mean, a lot of what we intend to create in this relationship as like a central shared nervous system. Like if you're not okay, I'm not okay. Like, and we'll work on that together until we're both okay. If one person's not feeling safety, then we both will work on like shoring up any cracks in that foundation to get back to it. Like, some people would look at that and be like, oh, codependence creeping in. Well, like, okay. But like that's what we're creating. And if that codes as codependence by certain metrics, then I think it's a risk that we're willing to take to really create, like, I don't say it lightly, like a shared central nervous system that I believe is far more powerful at being able to co-regulate, have one of our strengths help with the other one's weaknesses. And it's an experiment. Like we'll see where it's going, but I have
I love
confidence.
that.
Well, and so far, I mean, one of the things that makes it really easy to do this is how sexy it is. Because it's like, if I show up or he shows up with insecurities of either just my own or something to do with the relationship, and I notice like he and I both we're both explorers and are fascinated by the internal exploration as well. So we love the process of being like, oh, I'm feeling this, or I find this in me, or maybe this is related with this. And we'll share those things with each other. And, sometimes it's not pleasant. Like the other day, I was feeling my own, just from a long life of nervousness, from a childhood of nervousness, from so much nervousness. And I was just like feeling the chaos of that, the uncertainty in myself, like the storm was brewing inside of me. And I could have dealt with it alone, like I've had a lot of life that's taught me how to deal with it alone and not turn to somebody else. But with Stephen, there's so much safety to be held emotionally, which is amazing that you've cultivated that, especially from your greatest wound, that's now your greatest strength. Amazing. And so then through sharing that and not knowing where it's going to go, like, I don't know if it's going to turn into me crying. I don't know if it's where it's going to turn into. And then that turns into a hot tub ritual. And then, and then we come so much closer together because then it's like this release. And I'm like, I can feel how the nervousness almost felt like on a quantum level in all my cells, like ice, like frozen water crystals inside of me. And with conscious awareness and conscious breathing and like this alchemical sexual energy that we have with each other, it intentionally can turn all these ice crystals of nervousness in me, these cellular imprints, into this like yummy, delicious, like flowing water energy that is now in me. And now it's fun and it's sexy and we're, off to the races. And that has been so cool to have that reward consistently coming in of just not only is it safe to be able to explore our emotional complexity and these emotional landscapes with each other, but it usually turns into something extraordinarily delicious. So I don't know, it's just this feedback loop that's building a lot of safety.
You know, it's funny because I think sometimes about sort of maybe one of the old tropes of makeup sex, right? Like people, you go back to even to like Seinfeld, right? Like the 90s and 2000s, people say, oh, makeup sex is the best. And it's like, well, why? Because in that moment of conflict and in that moment of where the walls kind of burst open and then we were able to come back together, we're more open. We're just more open. The energy is flowing more and realizing that we can actually create that without having, it isn't so much the conflict and the makeup, it's just that vulnerability, like even crying, even going through a grief process and being held in that builds that flow of energy and those connections within us that lead to that deep intimacy that leads to that beautiful lovemaking.
I love what you're talking about here, especially this kind of trope of makeup sex. It really highlights a limiting belief that I had and wasn't aware it was a limiting belief until this relationship of it's like being in some more typical like anxious avoidant trap relationships where it's like cold for a while and then like come back together like so hot and so much. It's like the fear of losing it is now gone and the like coming together in like just the most passionate ways felt like the pinnacle of like almost excitement, or like the makeup part was just such a high that I think I developed a limiting belief. And since discussing this with Carrie, she had something similar of, if I get into something that's really secure and safe and not this like roller coaster of up, down, of disconnect and reconnection, that like, yeah, that might be better for me, but like vegetables are better for me. like what about the excitement of like, you know, it's like if I do heroin, I know it's bad for me, but like, man, does it feel good? And so like I had really coded this belief because having experienced those highs of like the makeup or the coming back together or the like, I'm so anxious and nervous about losing this connection and like, now we're back together, I can breathe. And how good does that feel? I really had this belief internalized that that was the pinnacle of excitement, of pleasure, of everything. And that, yeah, if I get in something safe and secure, that'll be better and more healthy for me, but it'll be like more boring or not feel as good. And like, we have blown that belief so far out of the water for all the reasons you just said, Chad, of like all of those feelings of like coming back to intimacy, coming back to security, like can exist in a healthy or secure relationship. And it's just, at least in my experience, like orders of magnitude more of the excitement, of the sexiness, of the pleasure, of whatever it was that I thought I needed, like that unhealthy, anxious, avoidant roller coaster in order to experience those highs. We've experienced highs so much more than that. It's almost laughable to me that I held that belief like 5 months ago.
Well, it's a universal belief. Like when we were doing our branding, we actually talked about safety is boring to a lot of people, right? Like safety, you can have safety or you can have freedom.
Or you can have hot sex.
And we're like, how do we create a new narrative where freedom and love are exciting, right? And that is actually the expression of the feminine and of the goddess. Is like the goddess is the tornado. She is the rainstorm. She is the soft, gentle rain. She's all of those things, but the feminine needs so much safety. And it takes so much safety. Like you will never get bored once that safety is created because both of you are going to keep showing new parts of you to each other, right? So it's like you're going to constantly be in a new relationship, the more safe that you get, which actually does create new excitement and new ways of being with each other. So that's actually, I love that you brought that up because it's just like a universal narrative that so many people think of, and it's actually not true.
It feels like to me, when I think about it, it feels like a paradigm shift out of scarcity into abundance. It feels like that level of shift where in scarcity, in roller coaster love, the fear of it going away and then like getting it back, like you're in scarcity, they're on that scarcity wheel. And like the thing that we've said about this, of this relationship that feels so good, is just how expansive it feels. Like I feel like I have infinite space to like unfold into and explore, and like it I just like, I've never felt this so much, that all of my energy can expand into this. Whereas before, when either I'd be in roller coaster love or trying to like cut myself off from, I don't know, saying I need to sacrifice things in order to be safe, like all of those containers, like I had to like contort to try to fit into it. And yeah, that's a big.
And now you just have this like giant container that you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's
Yeah.
like I can't even touch the edges.
Yeah.
Like how exciting is that? I get to grow into it.
Yeah.
Instead of try to fit into
Yeah.
it. Right.
Yeah.
I love
It's
that.
very sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said it that way, April, because that's another one of the, I mean, we don't explicitly state it, but kind of one of the core missions of our show is to sort of challenge that false dichotomy that you have to pick, right? You have to pick between safe or sexy. And, you know, I, with my background in addiction, found so much similarity to active drug addiction as so many relationships I'd have, right? And it was almost the Jones that made that moment where the high came hit so hard, right? It was the way that somebody that was not texting me back, or maybe I didn't know how we were in this roller coaster, when they came back in because of that time I had spent in worry or fear, made that dopamine hit so intense. But I got to a point where, similar with addiction, where it couldn't get me high enough to forget even for a moment that I had to come down. And that's when I met April, is coming into that place of like, there has to be something. There has to be something different than this. The roller coaster relationship, or the the stereotypical glorified roommates, and we are sometimes explicitly, but often very unconsciously, if you look at all of the messaging that we get in our lives from our family, from the media, from social media, it really is like, pick one. You can't have both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can, having conversations like candidly at men's groups of like, yeah, I know this like relationship I'm in has like some toxic cycles and like the ups and downs and the anxious avoidant, and we're spending more time in disconnection than connection. But like, oh, these highs are so high and passionate. Like, I don't know if I want to give that up, because like, if I find something safe and secure in the long run, like, am I always going to be like wistful of like, oh, but like, I'm there, like, it's too normal and too like safe and boring even. And, it's just wild to me now to think back to that version of myself, that I really believed that stuff. Like, it's wherever the tops of those roller coasters were is nowhere compared to even just like the normal state that we're in, let alone like when we have like our own periods of normal relational expansion and contraction, or like going through a period where we are stuck in some anxieties and fears and sharing that with each other and coming back. But at no point like putting the relationship on the line, or moving away from the security of knowing the like intention that we continue to choose back into each other. And I think she spoke to like what it feels like to continue to repattern the nervous system of like, oh, in the past, this might have led to like some like relationship threatening rupture. And that's not happening.
Yeah.
It's a knowing, not a taking for granted that, but just a knowing that we can always come back to the security. And like when we're feeling these like ultimate, like just gooey connected feelings, we've been talking like, let's like put some beacons and like some breadcrumbs. So like if whatever we need to, we can like find our way back here, and just continuing to repattern that in the nervous system. It's laughable that I used to hold that limiting belief. it's shattered in my mind because of the presence that Carrie's been in my life. So, yeah.
Well, I had a download as you were saying that about my past relationship and how I thought it was so safe and it was boring, right? And as you were saying that, I just kind of felt in that like, oh, cuz we're all misconstruing comfort for safety. Cuz I was really comfortable, but I was not actually in a safe relationship. It was not actually safe. The more that I'm out of it, the more I'm realizing how unsafe it was. And I was just really comfortable. And so as you were saying that, I was just like, oh, it's because we're all just using the word comfort as safety, but
Yes.
it's not actually really, because you guys actually are really truly cultivating safety, and it's uncomfortable
Yeah.
to be in a safe relationship, right?
Yeah. And I think about when you said comfort, what I think about is like the plight of modern society is that our bodies are comfortable while our souls are uncomfortable.
Mm.
And this is a lot of the exchange that that's the dance we're playing in modern consumerism. And so as like that, the expansion into that, what if I create a world for myself where my body is comfortable and my soul is comfortable? Like, can I expand into that world? And it is, when you get into it and when you experience it, like everything, your nervous system takes time to calibrate
Mhm.
to the new level. And it will initially be like, oh my God, is this going to last? Like,
Yeah.
how am I going to hold on to this? Like, is this just going to slip away?
Yeah.
One last that I have is when you talked about scarcity, I really like that really is part of the belief that I had about that high. And I always come back to that song. He says, sooner or later it's over. I just don't want to miss you tonight. And the difference in being in passion and being in love from that place of I've got to get all I can out of this because it's fleeting, it's fragile, it's going to fall apart any moment. And I know that. So it's similar to when I would get high, I would know that it was destroying my life. But for that moment, I didn't have to worry about it. And the difference in being able to lean into passion and love and excitement with the feeling of abundance of I do have time. Like we have time to create this. We have time to stumble. We have time to figure it out. We have a space to not have to get it right now because there is a tomorrow. It's like that same feeling of excitement, but without that underlying fear of when waiting any moment for the world to pull the rug out from under you.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to overstate what it feels like now to feel like I'm in a secure relationship versus everything that I've felt in the past. And I think it comes down to something you were just saying, Chad, about like kind of this nagging feeling in the back of the mind, like, is this really sustainable? And for me, that came to if I'm pretending to be something I'm not, if I'm like people pleasing or pretending to want something that I don't, if I'm wearing any of the masks, then that inherently doesn't feel super sustainable. It feels a lot like um, the kind of drug paradigm that we're talking about of the highs and the lows. And I think another limiting belief that I used to have was like, I have to wear the mask. Like I've got all these masks and it'll be better. Like, let me wear this one for this person and this one for this situation and this one for that thing. And I'm not here saying like I'm some Buddha that never wears masks anymore. I'm trying to be intentional about it. Obviously, in business, sometimes masks are coming out. It's not that I never wear a mask or don't have an ego. I'm not claiming that, but I'm trying to just be intentional and aware of what's happening with that, getting to this point of the sustainability you're talking about. It's like with Carrie, like I've experienced 10 times like more connected sexual, spiritual, physical just connection than I ever could have imagined. And at no point does it feel fleeting. It feels super sustainable and wholesome even like is and it really I think you spoke to like freedom earlier in this context. And to me, this is just for myself. I used to think that like by either walking on eggshells and like pretending like stuff didn't bother me if it did, or by like trying to wear a mask or pretend to be something I wasn't, that somehow like I'd get more and it would feel better.
Or last longer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now I see like all of that just leads to eventual crumble, eventual unsustainability. And so like we talked about this going into like this year, like my fundamental intention for myself is like one truth of integrity to myself. Like there's one version of me. It's up to me how much of that door of vulnerability I open to any given person, but nobody's going to get a different version of me than a different person. You either see more of me or you'll see less of me, but it's all that same thing. And for our relationship, it's like I want to show all of myself to Carrie and have her hold that. And sometimes that might be like difficult or annoying, or she might think I'm an asshole in certain ways. And all of that has happened. And I can't overstate the feeling of freedom that I feel from feeling like by my own metrics, not by anybody else's metrics, not by a church's metrics. I feel in integrity with myself, as in I'm showing up in alignment with how I choose to. That's certainly not perfect. I make tons of mistakes. I have a lot of shadows still operating. But to the extent that I know myself, which continually trying to get more awareness, I'm just trying to show up in integrity with that. And that feels so much more freeing than wearing masks.
Mm.
Well, and again, I just go back to these are the kind of conversations that made it feel so aligned to bring you guys on, because you're talking, you would talk about how you were building something with the, I always like to talk about the analogy of a house, right? Like everybody thinks about a house and they think about, oh, I want these big picture windows and I want this big, beautiful archway and I want this second story. And nobody ever says, oh, I can't wait to pour the footings.
Dig the hole.
I can't wait to put this really solid concrete foundation in. But that we've all, in kind of to follow that metaphor, we've all built a lot of beautiful houses that have blown over at the first storm. And you could hear the way that you guys talked about the intentionality to build that foundation and how you came in with that as your initial intention. And I'm just curious if you guys had some, just kind of, we were also talking about our core values right before we recorded, and one of them being practicality. And if you guys had some, you could share some of the things that you've done early on to build that foundation so that you have the possibility of having that house that could survive, the biggest storms.
I think the main thing that I want to share is one of the things I came into this relationship with a sense of, from not just my last relationship, but honestly my whole lifetime of relationships, is really what Yoda says, like, there is no try, there's only do. And it's like realizing, like, I've really tried in various relationships. Like, I've tried and I've smashed my head against a brick wall, and I've tried knowing in my gut and knowing inside of me that it's not right. And knowing, I know that, but I want to pretend I don't know that. And like, my mind wants to trick me, into trying for that. And so there was a lot of clarity in just that, like, okay, this next relationship, like, I mean, if I'm being really honest, like I just was like, my pussy knows. And I'm just going to trust in that. And I'm just going to trust in my body. And I'm going to trust that, like, if there's truly this desire inside of me, like, that's where my action comes from. My action is going to come from my like sacral energy and my sacral authority. And I'm not going to like mentalize it. I'm not going to be like, oh, like everyone in my family is saying this is a good fit and like this is on paper what it's supposed to be. Like, I'm going to really wait until my whole body is like an absolute fuck yes for this. And like, that's the energy that I'm going to create a relationship from. And the funny thing is like also how intention, at least for me, works and clarity is it's amazing to me how, like when you assert to me, like when you assert something, and especially if you hop into you quickly look into a little container of a potential thing and you're like, this is not what I want. And you declare like, this isn't working this way. Like, this isn't what I want. Like, I want this and I want this and I want this. And I'm not going to tolerate anything less. Like, I know that, if like you talked about the anxious avoidant trap, like I know if my little, like I have a lot of compassion for the little anxious Carrie inside of me that had a very traumatic childhood. And I am not going to put her through hell anymore. Like I'm going to scoop her up and I'm going to hold her. And I know what we deserve. And I know the love that I want to give to myself. And I know that there's going to be no tolerance anymore for someone who can't hold that level of love that I can hold for that little anxious part of me. And so it's amazing, I think, how when we're really being honest, how quickly we read people and how quickly we can feel into what's available there. And I think a lot of it is really getting the clarity of knowing what you deserve and really deciding that you're going to scoop up that little wounded part of you and you're going to hold them safe. And you're not going to let anybody touch you and hold you that isn't going to hold that part of you safe. And like, of course, like another person, like, of course, people make mistakes, but it's like after they've made a mistake, how do they handle that? How much do they care? How much do they show up with that care?
Yeah, where's the
they've made a
accountability?
mistake? Yeah. And so when you find someone who is so willing to and just in every way wants to hold that little part of you with care, like that is what makes it so your body is a fuck yes for somebody.
When I love that you're talking about your body, because Steve, when you were talking earlier, you were like, I have all of these things and they're in my body still, right? Like they're still in your body, but your body does know. And the body is so much slower. Like first we know in the mind and then we know in the heart. And then we have a deep knowing of the body. And the body's so much slower than the gnosis. And so finding someone because like if your body already knows and your body already is feeling safe, that's so good, because then that's like giving the rest of like everything else is going to acclimate to that rather than your mind trying to force your body or tell your body, which would be the old way of doing something. And then you having all that safety in your body and your body feeling safe with him is going to help those little, for those of you listening, not watching the video, he like pointed to his arms and he had all these little fractures, right? These little bubbles, these little pockets of like emotion that are going to come out. But like at your core, you had done enough emotional safety and enough emotional, like, yes, you were creating the unit together, but you're coming in with already having done so much work together that that's possible to co-regulate and have that co-creation that you're creating.
Yeah. I mean, I think you really spoke to that eloquently. And it's insane the amount of somatic releases that I've had with Carrie since getting together. And the contrast of that too, I'll just speak, Chad's probably familiar with this too in men's work of, we have people that are like, I've been disconnected from my emotions. Like I'm finally, my woman sent me to this men's group to get in touch with my emotions. They finally do. They finally start to get vulnerable and they go home and they like have a big like sob and cry and are feeling this grief and feeling weak. And then the same woman who sent them to this men's group is like, I'm not really attracted to you anymore. No. And like, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but like it does happen. And it's something that men are really cautious about of like, you're inviting my emotions forward, but like, are you actually strong and safe enough? Because this goes in both ways. Like, can you actually hold my big emotions? It's not like I'm directing my anger at you, but like, if you just even witness me in a massive somatic release. And so, to contrast that to how Carrie has been, early on in our relationship, we were out at the Earthship and she was playing some songs on her guitar. And there was a particular song she was playing that just tapped into something, just like you were saying, April. Like in my body, I could feel bubbling up just this immense well of sadness and grief. And I think some of it was probably related to my sister's passing, but there was more there. I don't even know where it all came from, but she was playing her song and I just started heaving and sobbing, and she could just hold that energetically. I didn't need anything more from her than to just continue her beautiful act of creation, which was triggering massive feelings, really painful feelings in me. And I sobbed and I shook. And I think even my daughter happened to come out during that, and she was watching me just cry and shake. And it felt so pure to just be able to release that. I think that was actually the first time my daughter said she's seen me cry. And it was powerful. And then even that same day later, we'd walked up by this magical tree and I'd asked her to play that song again, and even deeper, even more. And these were really painful emotions, but it felt so good to be releasing them and felt so good to feel the safety and security that Carrie could hold this. And I think she hugged me and held me for 10, 15 minutes as I was just shaking, releasing, sobbing. And it feels like those experiences paved the way for, like Carrie can talk about this, like really like multiple times a day. I have kind of something that comes up that'll get me teary-eyed. And a lot of times now it's joy, it's beauty. Like I've cried listening to her play a song just because I'm overwhelmed by the beauty of it. And I get joy overloads now. And I think those were only possible due to some of the heavier stuff, which still comes up. And so the safety that I feel of her capacity, like her hardiness, her ability to hold like whatever my biggest things are, really, I think is a necessary ingredient. That the safety goes both ways. It's not just me creating a container where she can be held. It really is like equal, like two powerful equals, which is scary because I think we're both used to being in more control. But
Well,
yeah.
that scenario you talk about, I'm really glad you brought it up and framed it the way you did, because that does happen, right? And I think that's okay. It's okay if you're a woman out there that's going through this awakening and wanting your man to open up, and then the process of him learning to do that for the first time is and you're like, what the fuck? Right? Because we all have to constantly come back to remembering that we are doing things as adults and sometimes as seasoned, graying, salt and peppered adults that we've never done before. And we're going to show up, and we need to give ourselves a lot of grace and a lot of room for the process of working our way through it, of feeling our way through it. You had sort of shared about that when your emotions started to come out. They would come out in this way that people would be somewhat overwhelmed by, and realize that like the process sometimes is messy. And if we can really lean into that and continue to give ourselves grace, because I also know that some of those stories have ended in relationships ending, but some of them have ended in the other partner going and saying, oh, well, shit, now I expanded and I called him forth to expand. And then he came back and expanded, and I didn't like how that felt because I started to lose control, and now I have to expand. And this sort of back and forth of energetically like calling each other forth to greater expansion is what that process can look like if we can lean into it. If we can remember to take that grace and that beginner's mind. And we also were talking about, we were playing drums right before, and we were talking about, the biggest challenge is, especially as an adult that has control and is good at certain areas of our life, to go and do something and not be good at it right away. And that is a lot of where relationship challenges come in. Like we're having safe relationships. Well, I've never had a safe relationship, so I don't know how the fuck to show up in a safe relationship. We're learning this as we go along. Like we're learning this, and sometimes we're learning it the hard way. And that, it does bring us to the question we like to ask everybody, and we like to ask both of you guys at the end of each show is, what's one piece of advice you each would give our audience, or what's one piece of advice that you would leave our audience with to give them hope and love?
The piece of advice that I would want to share, I just, I was thinking about how for both of us, so like I also like I feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Like I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like he's so cute and sweet and loving and sexy and fun. Oh my God. Like, and in my last relationship before this, like we didn't feel like each other was the bee's knees. And that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of relationships out there where people might feel that way. And I think it takes effort. It takes like letting yourself unfold into who you are to actually become the kind of person that somebody else would meet and be like, oh my God, you are the most incredible human I've ever experienced. Like you really have to unfold into who you are and like explore and expand into who you are and become the kind of person that somebody else would authentically say, I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be with you. And I think both of us having that feeling toward each other, it just like that is something that is just indescribable and is what is holds it together, and it makes it so sexy and effortless and fun and enjoyable. And just I think just holding out, like don't settle just because your family thinks they're so good for you and it's so safe and secure. Like if they don't think you are the shit, like don't be in that relationship. And if you don't think, like wait until you find the person that you both feel like you are the luckiest person in the world to be together.
So good.
Can I just say one thing real quick before you answer that question, Stephen? Baby, you're the bee's knees.
Yeah, you're too, baby.
Right? I really do feel that for both of you guys. It's been wonderful witnessing your relationship bloom and blossom and into the kind of containers you're creating. The thing for me that I would share is, again, the beat on the drum. Like it all comes down for me to authenticity, getting totally authentic with myself, my responsibility of authenticity, myself internally. Anything that I'm hiding from myself is going to fuck up everything. So authenticity to self, and then authenticity externally, like have the confidence that that which is meant for you will vibrate towards you, and that which is not will vibrate away while you're authentic. Things vibrating away from you while you're being authentic is a feature, not a bug. Like, and it's not a scarcity loss, like good. That's how it's supposed to work. I think it's not lost on me that when Carrie and I showed up to Metasound, like I was in a space of, I'm just going to be myself authentically. And I'm here so that my kids can have a good time and hear some music and camp and playing the zip line. And Carrie was there to make music authentically. And neither of us was trying to be somebody that we weren't to get something, none of it. Like just both being totally ourselves in what we wanted to be. And I think that's what magnetically drew it together. Like the law of attraction is going to work far more efficiently and effectively than any amount of strategizing or mentaling or trying to pretend to be something we're not.
Love it.
I love that. And it reminds me of a joke that my old buddy of mine from recovery used to have with his friends when he was in active addiction. They'd be like, shoot up right before you go into the job interview. You probably won't get the job, but if you do, it's going to be the perfect job for you. And that really is a lot of what it comes down to, right? Like if we're showing up, if we show up authentically, we may or may not get a relationship. But if we show up inauthentically and we get a relationship, then that's a choice we're going to have to live with. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We may cut that joke, but anyway, thank you guys so much. Time flows so fast and it's so fun to talk to you. And I'm sure we will have conversations again with the future. But for today, I just want to remind everyone to be brave. Love is worth it.